The most terrifying part of Joe McNamara's kidnapping isn't that the Russians found her. It's that they found her, captured her, and deliberately kept her alive. After everything Joe has done after the Yurimov operation and the discovery of a Russian network buried inside American institutions, killing her would have been the easiest option. Instead, the present-day timeline shows Joe restrained, isolated, exhausted, and subjected to psychological torture. Someone wants something from her. And if that's true, then Joe's kidnapping was never simply an act of revenge. It was an intelligence operation. Look at what happened 6 months earlier. Joe and her team capture Alexei Yurimov, a major Russian intelligence figure, and almost immediately the Russians begin pushing back. First, they send contractors to Joe's home. Then the CIA discovers that those attackers were part of a much larger network. Alexandra reveals that Russia has spent years building assets inside the United States, reaching from ordinary citizens all the way into government. 5 sitting senators are supposedly compromised. That changes the meaning of Joe's capture completely. Joe isn't just the woman who led an operation against Russia. She's one of the few people who knows how America discovered the infection. She knows who was involved, what information was used, and what the CIA planned to do next. And that's why the water torture in the present timeline becomes so important. Joe is being forced to relive the operation that led to her capture. The television is playing the announcement about the Russian agent while Joe is trapped in that room. That's not random psychological torture. They're making her watch the moment when the American counterintelligence operation went public. Whoever has her wants to break down the timeline, understand what Joe knew, and possibly discover exactly how much the CIA has learned about the Russian network. The Russians don't necessarily need Joe to confess one huge secret. They may need her to reveal dozens of small details that, when combined, expose the entire American response. There's another reason they can't simply kill her. Joe may be more valuable alive than Yurimov ever was. Yurimov was a target. Joe is an operator who knows how the targets are found. She understands surveillance, recruitment, counterintelligence, extraction, and the people involved in these missions. More importantly, she knows the personalities of the people hunting the Russian network. She knows Caitlin. She knows Byron. She knows how the Lioness program operates. She knows Cruz, Kyle, Tucker, and the rest of the team. If the Russians can make Joe talk, they could potentially map the operation that is hunting them from the inside. But there is an even darker possibility. What if they aren't trying to learn who the Russian assets are? What if they already know? Alexandra's revelation suggests that the network is enormous. Russian intelligence already knows about Joe's team and previous Lioness operations. That means the Russians may not need Joe to identify their people. They may need her to reveal what the CIA knows about those people. There's a massive difference. Knowing who your assets are is one thing. Knowing whether the enemy has discovered them is another. If Joe can be forced to reveal which senators, analysts, military personnel, or federal employees are under suspicion, the Russians could eliminate those exposed assets, disappear their networks, and rebuild before the CIA ever gets close. And this would explain why Joe is being psychologically tortured rather than simply interrogated with conventional methods. They aren't looking for one answer. They're looking for cracks, sleep deprivation, repetition, pain, confusion, isolation. Make Joe exhausted enough. And eventually, even a highly trained operative can start revealing information without realizing its importance. A sentence about a meeting. A name she assumes they already know. A location. A timeline. A detail about how the CIA followed someone. Any one of those pieces could become valuable. There's also something fascinating about Joe's personality. She isn't someone who easily breaks because she's afraid of dying. She spent her entire career accepting that possibility. So, threatening her life may accomplish almost nothing. But the Russians don't have to make Joe afraid of death. They can make her afraid that she has already failed her family and her team. That's why psychological torture makes sense for her specifically. Joe's greatest vulnerability isn't necessarily herself. It's the people she feels responsible for. And remember what happened after the attack on her house. Joe's daughter, Kate, openly asked her to leave the CIA. Neil refuses the weapon at first, but Joe puts it into his bag anyway. Joe knows her family is now exposed. She even tells them that quitting won't make the danger disappear because the enemy doesn't simply stop pursuing someone because that person resigns. That decision matters because, by the time we reach the present timeline, Joe has been proven right in the worst possible way. The The Russians didn't stop. They followed her. They studied her. And eventually, they took her. But there's one possibility that makes the entire situation even more disturbing. Joe may have been captured because the Russians want to know whether their network has already been compromised. Alexandra's dossier contains names. Joe knows about the dossier. Caitlin knows. Byron knows. The White House knows. If the Russians discover exactly how much the Americans know, they can decide which assets to abandon and which ones to protect. Joe becomes the perfect source because she was directly involved in the operation designed to flush those people out. That means Joe isn't the final target. The network is. And Joe is the key. The terrifying question heading deeper into the season isn't simply, will Joe escape? It's what will happen if she refuses to talk. Because if Joe stays silent, her captors may escalate. If they kill her, they lose their source. If they release her, they risk sending an American operative back into their own operation. So the most dangerous option may be to keep her alive long enough to turn her into something else. A weapon. Imagine Joe eventually being released, or escaping, and returning to the CIA with information he believes he discovered during captivity. What if some of that information is deliberately planted? What if her captors don't need Joe to betray America willingly? What if they can manipulate what she believes she knows and send her back into the organization carrying misinformation? That would be the ultimate counterintelligence attack. Because the perfect spy isn't the person who knows everything. The perfect spy is the person everyone trusts. And nobody in the CIA has more reason to be trusted than Joe McNamara. That's why I don't believe her captors are keeping Joe alive simply because they want answers. They're keeping her alive because Joe herself may be the next battlefield. The same woman who spent years entering hostile territory, manipulating targets, and extracting information is now trapped inside someone else's operation. For 2 seasons, Joe was the hunter. This season, she has become the target. And if the people holding her are smart enough to understand that killing Joe wastes her value, then they already know something terrifying about her that even Joe may not understand yet. Her greatest weapon isn't the information inside her head. It's the trust people have in her. And that could be exactly what they intend to weaponize. And there's another reason keeping Joe alive could be more valuable than killing her. They may want her to lead them to everyone else. Joe is not operating alone. Caitlin, Byron, Kyle, Cruz, Tucker, and the rest of the team are all connected through the same investigation. If Joe's captors understand how the Lioness unit responds to a missing operative, they can potentially watch the rescue effort and identify the people who come looking for her. Joe could become bait without even knowing it. Every phone call, every surveillance sweep, every emergency extraction attempt could expose another layer of the American response. That also makes the strange circumstances of her abduction worth watching. The attackers didn't simply storm Joe's house and execute everyone. They isolated her, searched for the locator, and moved her somewhere controlled. They understood that Joe would be carrying a tracker, and they knew enough about her operational habits to search for it. That means this wasn't some improvised revenge attack. Somebody had studied her procedures, somebody knew she was valuable, and somebody knew that the safest way to disappear with Joe was to remove the one thing that could lead the CIA directly to her. But here's where the theory gets even darker. What if Joe's captors intentionally allowed the CIA to find the tracker? Think about it. The team follows the signal, reaches the location, and discovers nothing except the device. If that was deliberate, then the tracker wasn't merely removed. It was used to control the CIA's perception of where Joe was. The team believes they have found the end of the trail, while Joe has already been moved somewhere else. That would explain why the rescue operation ends with an empty location. The Russians wouldn't just be hiding Joe, they would be teaching the CIA that its usual methods no longer work. And that could be exactly what the infected bear metaphor is pointing toward. America has built an enormous intelligence system designed to detect threats, but an enemy operating from inside that system can predict how the system reacts. Every American advantage becomes a potential vulnerability. Tracking technology can be exploited. Communication can be monitored. Government procedures can be anticipated. Even a rescue operation can become an intelligence-gathering opportunity. Joe is trapped because the people hunting her may understand the machinery of American intelligence almost as well as the people running it. Which brings us back to the biggest question. What happens when Joe finally gets out? Because escaping captivity won't necessarily mean winning. If her captors have spent weeks or months studying her, they may have learned how she thinks, what she protects, and what she will do when someone threatens her team. Joe could escape the room and still be walking into their next move. The real victory for her won't be simply surviving. It will be discovering why they needed her alive in the first place, and whether the people waiting for her back home can still be trusted.